visitors, welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Bown, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Grant McFarlane. We are honoured to acknowledge the Commanding Officer of the 1st Close Health Battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Elizabeth Barnett, and Regimental Sergeant Major of the 1st Close Health Battalion, Warrant Officer Kirsten Tanner. We also warmly welcome Mr. Jim Quick, President of the HMAS Sydney and Escorts Association, ACT, and representing the Naval Association, ACT. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember sick berth attendant Roderick Richard Wilson, the ship's company of HMAS Sydney. Roderick Wilson was born in Berth, South Australia on the 14th of June 1919, the second son of Hugh and Pauline Wilson. He grew up and was educated in Berth, where his father was the overseer of the works of the Berth Town Council. Wilson later went to work in Penola, where his father's family came from, and joined the Penola Ambulance Service. Following the outbreak of the war, Wilson was called up for the militia, became a dispatch rider. On the 16th of December 1940, at the age of 21, Wilson enlisted in the Royal Australian Navy Reserve. He was briefly posted to the newly commissioned Naval Depot, HMAS Torrens, in Port Adelaide, before being sent to HMAS Cerberus in late December. Cerberus was the Navy's training establishment, some 70 kilometres south of Melbourne, on the western Port Bay. Wilson remained at Cerberus for several months before being posted to HMAS Sydney in August 1941. For much of that year, Sydney was engaged in escort duties, which took the cruiser to the Netherlands, East Indies, Singapore, Noumea, Auckland and Suva, before returning to Western Australian waters. A modified Lender class light cruiser, Sydney was armed with 8 6-inch guns and was the pride of the Royal Australian Navy. It had been built in England and was commissioned into the Royal Australian Navy in 1935. There was a mixture of ages and experience among Sydney's company. On 19th of November 1941, Sydney was steaming back to Fremantle, having escorted a troop ship part of the way to Singapore. At about 4 p.m, the cruiser spotted a suspicious merchant ship and decided to investigate. By 5:30 p.m, Sydney had almost drawn alongside the vessel when suddenly it revealed its true identity, a German raider. Hoisting the German naval ensign, the Comoran opened fire with its guns and torpedoes. Its first salvo slammed into Sydney's bridge. The Australian cruiser returned fire. The Comoran's second and third salvos again hit Sydney's bridge and amidship. The cruiser's 3 main turrets, A, B and Y, were soon out of action, but X turret kept up fast and accurate fire that hit the raider's funnel and engine room. Sydney was hit by a torpedo between A and B turrets. Mortally damaged in a blaze, Sydney turned away from the raider but continued to fight, using its second armament and torpedoes. Comoran was also burning. At 6:25 p.m, its captain gave the order to abandon ship. As the German sailors evacuated their stricken vessel, they watched the Australian cruiser, now only a distant glow in the dark horizon, disappear into the night. At midnight, Sydney was gone, lost with all hands, 645 men, including Roderick Wilson. He was 22 years old. Wilson was thought to have been the first man from the Berth district to be killed in the war. A former employee wrote a condolence letter to his parents, describing Wilson as a lad of many excellent qualities with a cheery smile and courteous behaviour. Roderick Wilson is commemorated on the Plymouth Naval Memorial in Britain. His name is also enlisted on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember sick berth attendant Roderick Richard Wilson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and the hope for a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial